I want to talk about Iron Fist on Netflix. It came out this weekend and I watched it over the course of the weekend. It's probably the most controversial, or let's say the most talked about Netflix series for all the wrong reasons that's come out recently from the Marvel lot. I thought the best way to look at it was with pros and cons so that we don't miss anything out. But first of all I'm going to say is a lot of people talk about whitewashing and how Danny Rand, because he does Kung Fu, should be Oriental or Chinese. No, because the character, as far as I'm aware, always has been and always is shown as a white American who ends up in a faraway land learning Kung Fu and then returns as the Iron Fist. That's the whole point of the story, is that there's meant to be this tension between him being from one world and then coming into the other. I think the whole point about saying he should have been Chinese or Oriental is rubbish. If you want a Oriental character, then there's one in Marvel, Shang-Chi, the Master of Kung Fu. And you could even have him go against Danny Rand in some incarnation, as he would suit that kind of battle, the two Kung Fu masters. So anything else about whitewashing is just people trying to make a thing out of nothing without actually knowing about the character itself. So, on with the pros and cons. Right then, the first pro about this series is the character Colleen Wing. She's a Chinese, Japanese, it's never actually said. The actress has got Singapore sort of heritage, but she's from England. But she looks Oriental. She is the love interest, and she is the best part of the series throughout it. She has a clear story arc. It turns out she's sympathetic to Danny Rand, but then it turns out she's part of the Hand, and then it turns out that she turns her back on the Hand, and there's lots of conflict, and she actually goes through an emotional spectrum, an emotional arc. She's pretty to look at, which is, you know, a plus. And she has all the best fight scenes in the series. She's a likeable character, and they put a lot of effort into writing a character throughout the series. She probably has more screen time, or if not the same, as Danny Rand's character. The next plus is Ward Marcham. I think it's Marcham, can't remember now. He's one of the sort of, so say, lead bad guys, but is he or isn't he? And that's one of the good things, is you start off being made to think that he's this nasty piece of work, and he's probably the more realistic of all the characters, in that he's neither black or white. He's totally grey, in that he's just interested in pursuing his business. Yeah, he's a little bit shady, but then what person who runs a massive corporation isn't shady? And he's then got this story about how he's basically bullied and controlled by his dad, and all he wants is to break free from that and live his own life. His character has a full emotional spectrum. He's got a full story arc, and he ends up in a different place to where he started as a result of the journey. And you almost end up rooting for him a little bit more than anyone else in the series, because of, well, probably the acting for the character and the level of investment you have in everything he does. He has more things happen to him than Danny Rand does throughout the series, and it's a shame that, you know, they had to make the series like that and they couldn't focus on other elements. But he's one of the plus points, and I didn't think he'd be a plus point until the last few episodes, when shit starts getting real for him, let's say, with his dad and his family. The other plus point is Rosario Dawson, who has been in all of the other Netflix series. She plays Claire, the night nurse. She turns up in this at about the same time she does in Luke Cage, which is halfway through, and she lifts the series immediately. She's just a good presence in the series. She brings with her the promise of linking it to the other Netflix series, but as you'll find out in the cons list, that's an issue. And she's just really well acted, and she also acts as a voice of reason. When everyone else is making these decisions and doing all these things, she's the one that jumps up and goes, whoa, 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 hang on a minute. They've all got machine guns. What do you think you're going to do? Even if you are a master of Kung Fu, they just shoot you. And that's nice to have that sort of level of realism come to the series. I know they're all meant to be set in that sort of gritty realism, but she's the only character that sort of comes out and says it as it is, as a real person, even though she's seen all these things. And she gets involved in some fights as well, and she also walks off with a pair of these sort of mini Wolverine claw gloves from her martial arts school. I don't know if that means she turns into some sort of character later on, or if this is just to give her a reason to turn up in fight scenes. I don't know. Don't know enough about it, and I don't want to find out, to be honest. I'll let them tell me when I'm sure the Defenders comes out, and as everyone thinks, she dies as a result of sort of galvanising the team. Okay, that's it for the pros. Sorry. The other pro is it's not 24 episodes long, it's only 12, or no, 13, so you don't have to sit through that much of it. Cons. First big con is Danny Rand himself. The character, not the actor. The actor's fine. You know, he's been in Game of Thrones and he's fine. He can only act the lines he's given and how he's told to portray the character. But Danny Rand has zero story arc. He ends up pretty much in exactly the same place as where he left, other than having ended the life of his parents' killers. But to be honest, it doesn't change his character as much as I can see, and that all happens in the last 15 minutes of the last episode. Other than that, he's just emotionally bland. You start off thinking that he's got these deep psychological problems. They forget about that for a few episodes. They sort of hint at them again a few episodes later. And to be honest, if he's got psychological problems, make him have them throughout the series, and then make that his main character trait. Whenever I've seen him in, whether it be animated series or stories, in graphic novels or comics, he's always spouting some Eastern philosophy and wisdom. They don't have him doing that. Only once in a blue moon do you get some of that come out, and it's just tedious waiting for it to pop up. Then he doesn't come off as some sort of mystic, somebody who's been there's this hint that he's been brainwashed at this monastery a little bit. None of that really comes off either. You have one moment where he sort of has his master's voice in his head, but it feels as though it was almost like every episode was written by a different person and none of them consulted each other as to what the character was going to be, bearing in mind he's the main character. The other con is a character, Joy Marcher. She is the sister of Ward, and she's one of the main three, not baddest, but let's say grey characters in it. She's just got naffle development. You think there's going to be a love triangle between Colleen, Danny and her. No, that's gone within like the first hour and a half of the series starting. She's just sat around doing not a lot, a few boardroom things and sort of pining over her dad and wondering what's going on. She's surplus to requirements. They'd be better off getting rid of her and just giving her lines and motivations to other parties in it, or killing her off halfway through as some sort of plot device or motivating factor. She's just dull. And also she's meant to play, this is the other thing as well generally, everyone's age is given, because he's been away for 15 years and their ages are given throughout the series. Everyone looks well older than their ages. I mean, they've had some hard lives considering they're multi-millionaires. It's meant to be 15 years later, and Danny was meant to be 10, so he's meant to be 25 in the series. Ward is meant to be 30 and he don't look 30. He looks like he's knocking on 40. And Joy, she don't look less than 30 when she's meant to be younger than Ward. So poor old Joy's had a hard time of it as well. I know it's a little thing, but they're all meant to be of a certain age, and they're shown as children. And just don't mention their ages. If you don't want me to start thinking about it, and that's how boring the series was, I start thinking about these things, then it becomes a problem. The other thing for a con is the fight scenes. Considering this is a bloke who's the master of Kung Fu, trained to be the best warrior in the land, and his fist lights up and he's got Kung Fu powers, the fight scenes are terrible. They're boring, dull, slow. You can see people pulling kicks. Considering you've got Daredevil, fights with the Punisher, you've got fights with even Jessica Jones on the series, and obviously Luke Cage, but he's somewhat more of a brawler. They're all well choreographed and good. This guy, it's full of like choppy cuts. Whoever it is who directs the action, it's all cut too much. You should be able to just pull back and see a Kung Fu fight scene in an open area occur. There's a really big letdown when in episode 6 he goes into a challenge where it's like Game of Death, if you know what Game of Death is, with Bruce Lee, where he has to fight a succession of warriors in a challenge, and you think, oh, here we go, it's going to be an hour of just like Kung Fu battles now, and this is where it comes out. It's not. It's crap. He goes through 3 of the most boring, dull people in the most boring, dull Kung Fu fights I've ever seen. Colleen Wing has better Kung Fu fights than he does, because she's got a sword and there's a bit more action. There's another fight scene where he fights a drunken master, like Jackie Chan's drunken master Kung Fu film, and it looks like it's filmed in sort of a bit of an old derelict building or back of a car park somewhere, and it just looks shit. It's a shame really, because obviously the bloke who does the Drunken Master stuff is skilled, but he can't act. I don't know why he's got this English accent. It's just weird. It's boring and weird, and they don't get any better. There's one sort of dramatic battle at the end where they have in a penultimate episode where they have a fight in the rain, and that's Colleen Wing. That's not Danny Rand. He doesn't even have a climactic kung fu fight at the end. He just has a face-off with a bloke with a gun in the rain, so you don't even get that satisfaction. So yeah, the fight scenes generally are just a letdown. For something that's based solely around a guy being a kung fu master, you know, you've got a problem there already. The other con, there's quite a long list of cons, is the Hand. In Daredevil, he's fighting the Hand throughout the 2 series, and they are made out to be some badass ninjas with arrows, ninja suits, sneaking in the shadows. In this, the Hand are basically, well, I know that this is a pun anyway, because the Foot were a thing of the Hand, but they're basically like the Foot Clan in Teenage Mutant Turtles 2, the original ones, where it's a load of teenagers in hoodies being recruited off the street, and they don't dress as ninjas. I don't think once they dress as a ninja. They don't use any ninja skills. They're just kids who do some martial arts, Power Rangers style, and no wonder, you know, they get the shit beaten out of them every 5 minutes by Iron Fist and the gang. And then for some reason there's like paramilitary people coming in as well, which is never really explained why there's military people when all the way through the Hand has used badass ninjas. And of course you hold it up next to Daredevil, particularly Daredevil Season 2, and it just makes zero sense. There's no reference as to why that's not gone on and why they've suddenly changed over to these teenagers, other than the fact that there's different divisions of the Hand, but the Hand just aren't threatening in this. The other thing is they don't ever reference the activities that the Hand are undertaking in the Daredevil series, which is trying to summon something from these big pits leading to hell. That's just not mentioned. They're focusing solely on sort of a brainwashing cult with a bit of heroin dealing on the side. Real lack of incoherency, and it's almost as if they haven't watched or understood what was going on in any of the other series. And the other con is the general tone of the series. All the other Netflix series have had at least 1 or 2 general tones. Sometimes they have half the series is one tone, and then they have a sort of flip where it goes through to a different tone to finish out the series, like with Luke Cage, where it starts off being sort of blaxploitation, and then halfway through it flips over into a sort of action superhero series. This, it's all over the place. There's no real tone. It's got no sense of humour. It doesn't want to laugh at itself. There's lots of weird business stuff in it, which again would be good if you were trying to do it as a business show. But you start off thinking that there's going to be this thing where he's a young kung fu master, and you show him doing a bit of Tai Chi, listening to this sort of early noughties gangster rap. And then that gets forgotten about until about 2/3 through the series, and then it comes back once again. Then it gets forgotten about, then it comes back right at the very end. Why not just make it like a sort of kung fu film where he's going through and he's talking like a kung fu master, and it's juxtaposed against the business world, and that'll be good. Instead you just get this really, really flat, bland level of tone for the whole thing, and it doesn't really have its own identity as a result. So that's no good. The other thing is there's no flashback. You're told about all this time he goes off for 15 years to this monastery, and he learns all these skills, terrible training, a bit of brainwashing, that kind of stuff. You never see it. I know it's cliched maybe to have a flashback, but by episode 6 you really want one. And it doesn't have to be that long. I mean, it just puts a bit of more meat on the bones of the character. Showing him just doing a little kid doing some general kung fu stuff in a field with a load of other people will be absolutely fine, and just a little bit of sort of kung fu themed action from that point of view, and it would just be a nice like palate cleanser in the series. But they don't bother with that. The other thing they don't have is any costume for the Iron Fist. They've got a very sketchy old clip of one of the predecessors in the Iron Fist role, and he's got a bit of the mask on, like he wears a sort of bandana like Daredevil does over his head, but you've got no other reference to the costume whatsoever. Danny Rand never wears any remotely costume looking clothes. He's just got a suit on, or a shirt and trousers, or a t-shirt. He's never actually in any form of costume or wears anything that's the same, really the sort of gold and green colours that he wears in the comic books. And they could have a play on that. He could have a gold and green sort of tracksuit on, anything like that you could unzip down the front, just to hint at it. And the nearest you get is you see one shot of him in his sort of robes, and they're a gold and green colour, but there's no action. It's just poor in that respect. All the other series managed to get away with people having hints at what their costumes are, and you could even say this is a traditional outfit of the Iron Fist and just make a joke of it, and people could laugh at him and he could adapt it for street use. Just anything, but they don't even try and broach that subject. The other issue with it is there's no real tie-in to the other Netflix series. There's references to characters, so you got Hogarth, the solicitor, played by can't think of her name, Carrie-Anne Moss off The Matrix, but she makes no reference to the other series. You've got obviously Claire, the night nurse, but considering he's fighting a hand and she's mixed up with it, if only she knew someone else who fights a hand regularly. Well, she does, she knows Daredevil, but she doesn't think for 1 minute to put them both in touch with each other. Okay, and the next thing we've got is finally that there's no dragon in the series. And that being that it's hinted that he's got this chat mark on his chest from having a fight battle with a dragon that lives in a cave, which is part of his character's background, and you never see the dragon. Is the series generally any good? Well, yes and no. It's not up to the standard of the other Marvel Netflix series, that's for sure, but it's not terrible. It's just a very long drama about business stuff with some fighting thrown in the middle. Is it worth watching to try and make sure you've got the full picture before the Defenders series comes out? No. Only watch it if you're a real fan and you want to just watch it for sort of completionism, but otherwise you can skip this and you're better off just keep refreshing yourself on Daredevil series 1 and 2 before it comes over to the Defenders. There's plenty of other things to watch and waste 13 hours of your life.